we've been offering you a lot of our thoughts, and we really want to turn this back to you and to say, what can you do in your organization, in your environment, in your communities to strengthen U.S. competitiveness? In effect, this is a call to action. And how can we collectively come together to strengthen the commons? I think we have a great opportunity here. I've heard some great ideas. Certainly the ideas in the New York panel were just terrific. You know, there actually is an historical analogy here. If you go back to 1969, when the United States was being rent apart by race riots, by riots over Vietnam, protests over Vietnam, and very severe splitting apart, the business community came together with leaders, mayors, governors, and people in their local communities and put together programs for hiring more, for returning veterans, for hiring people who couldn't otherwise find work, for helping the handicapped, and doing all kinds of programs that really did a lot to restore the U.S. economy at that time. Now, it wasn't a year later that Milton Friedman wrote his famous article challenging that, but nonetheless, business went on. And I think it did a great deal, and business leadership really came to the fore at that time. And I think this is a similar time we're calling for. There's no doubt that the last decade has been a difficult one for all of us after the great growth period of the 90s. As we've heard, we've lost a great deal. And now the question is, how do we get it back? And I think many of us have come to the conclusion that if we wait for the government, as we've been doing for the last 5 years, it's a bit like Samuel Beckett's play, Waiting for Godot, and the two tramps, that we're waiting for a Godot who's never going to come. In fact, you can actually make quite a strong case that the U.S. is too complex today for one-size-fits-all policies. And actually, the strength of the country can be, as Michael Porter has done his research shown, in tremendous regional clusters, in industry clusters, and in groupings, area groupings. And so we're asking each of you to take and make a difference and make that kind of commitment today. Because I think we can't wait. We can't wait another 5 years. It's quite probable we'll have another 5 years of gridlock in Washington. We can't wait while China, India, not just the Asian governments move ahead of us, but governments like Germany as well are moving very rapidly with their competitiveness. The U.S. has great strengths, but we've got to move those strengths ahead, and now is the time to act. It's not a time to wait, to strengthen the commons, because we have just that opportunity. And I think one of the key things we can do is not only act in our own areas, and one of the things we hope to do at Harvard Business School is look at how we can learn from each other. What can be the cross-learning opportunities from a sharing of best practices across the country, across industries. The focus, as you've heard clearly, is on collaborative and voluntary action. We really think in the 21st century, this kind of leadership, collaborative leadership, have you seen in the New York panel, beats tops-down, legally mandated action. I know many would disagree with that, but I'm a strong believer that if we can do this on a voluntary basis, we're going to get there a lot faster than we would otherwise. And New York really is a role model for just that kind of collaboration. Under Mayor Bloomberg, he's brought industry and education and his own government together with labor leaders and various departments to really make a difference, along with the nonprofit communities. And you see the difference. You see a city group makes, and creating an organization like PTEC. And so I think we're also seeing this around the United States. There's some very exciting things happen that we've studied. Looking at a city like Charlotte, North Carolina, where it had a huge banking industry that frankly has laid off many thousands of workers in the last 3 years. And yet Jim Rogers, the CEO of Duke Energy, has brought together people to create an energy cluster, and has an Envision Charlotte effort around bringing energy. And Siemens has moved their entire energy business from Atlanta up to Charlotte and is bringing more and more businesses to that headquarters. But in addition to that, entrepreneurs are coming from California and Colorado to base there because they find it a good place to create an energy cluster, if you will. And at the same time, they're doing some remarkable things with local community colleges to try to create the skilled workers that you need, and bringing in the German apprentice system. In South Carolina, Rosabeth mentioned New Carolina, the effort that Mike Porter and others have worked so closely with to upgrade the manufacturing capabilities, not just attract foreign plants, but plants like the Boeing 787 plant. In my own Minnesota, we created something called the Itasca Project, which represents the CEOs of every major corporation in Minnesota, and that's a headquarters city, as well as heads of governments, heads of educational institutions, heads of hospitals. They're all at the table. And you know, they started out as a jobs challenge. And the interesting thing they found in Minnesota, that we had a skills shortage. That McKinsey did a report that showed within 10 years there'll be a shortage of 322,000 people for jobs. In fact, the governor Dayton called together 800 people and found business leaders, and the number one concern they had was lack of skilled people. And these were mid-sized companies. So how do you create that skills mismatch we've heard today? Well, what they've done is they've created a greater MSP to go out and create those jobs. They've had a supplier showcase, and I think the ideas you've heard today about linking large business and small business through the supplier structure, the supply chain, can only strengthen both. And we need to do both. We too often taught about these as dichotomous. We need to bring them together. And I think the education sector has an incredible role to play. Too often we just thought about university education, not enough. What can we do with training more skills and creating apprentice programs? Northern California, of course, has had a sustained entrepreneurial structure that has not been matched anywhere, but it can be done more. Look at the biotech sector outside of Washington and Maryland, and you've seen in a city like Denver, where the coalition has come together to recreate lower downtown called Lodo and a transportation hub. And I think one of the most dramatic changes, one of the things that concerns me most when I hear about the post-industrial economy, manufacturing is gone, is it can't be gone. As you heard from Willie Shee, it can't be gone because R&D is going to go with it. But if you look at what's happened in Detroit, where the city has come under extremely difficult times with the decline of the automobile industry, you have leaders, not just of the big three, which you do, Alan Mulally of Ford, Dan Axelrod of General Motors, and Baccioni of Chrysler, coming together with big labor and having a rapprochement, much more like the German labor situation, where they're working towards the benefit of the company and put together new labor agreements that's allowing Ford to bring manufacturing back to Michigan and create new plants and plants from overseas, from outside the United States. And the resurgence of the big three automobile manufacturers, I think, is one of the most stunning success stories in this country. And it can be duplicated everywhere, not just in Detroit. It can be done by when people come together to try to solve problems and put them on a positive basis. And even at Harvard Business School, under our Dean Nitin Noria, we've seen the opportunity to develop leaders who make a difference in the world, global leaders who can operate anywhere in the world. We recognize these leaders ultimately are going to strengthen America. I know at Medtronic we concentrated a great deal on two things: on healthcare effectiveness, not selling our products, but how do we create an effective system to sell into, as well as education at K through 12, science and technology. So I'd like to ask you today, what can you do to make a difference? The mission of Harvard Business School is very clearly leaders who make a difference in the world. How can you make that difference in your community, in your organization, and would you make that commitment? So if you would go to your brochure, and you have a form in there in the back of the left-hand side, and this is a competitive project commitment form. We'd like each of you to complete this form, either now or you can send it in to us. It's very easy. And what we want to do is we want to get a series of commitments from people to show what difference can we make. We're going to create a website to share these commitments, and then we hope to do research on the best practices to see what's done so it can be shared from one part of the country to another. So some of the examples on this sheet are training and apprentice programs, the community college programs like we've seen in Charlotte. We see opportunities to create, strengthen the middle-sized companies as well as very small and startup companies. Opportunities to bring manufacturing back to the United States, as both General Electric and Ford have done. To strengthen regional clusters. These can become very important. And we've seen that in Northern California. We've certainly seen it in many parts of the United States. How can we do that? And business process improvements to make healthcare more efficient and more effective. You've probably read the article in the New York Times yesterday about IBM and what they're doing in Rio de Janeiro. Well, there's no reason every city in the United States can't do that to make our cities run better. It just requires that level of commitment. So then the ask for you is, what kind of commitment are you prepared to make on behalf of your organization? And will you bring that forward to us? Will you share it with us? And so we can share it on the website. And ultimately, we're doing a lot of research now in individual companies and communities that are taking these kind of actions. So just in closing, just simply ask yourself, rather than looking to the government, the federal government, to take these actions, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when? Because I really believe that this is the time to go through a massive revitalization in the United States. This is a great country, but we want to make it even greater and more welcome to people from all over the world to do business here, and even more exciting place to do business. So thank you very much. And now I'd like to turn the program back for the final close to our Dean Noria, who I would say is one of the most transformational leaders I've ever met and really making a huge difference in the leadership of our school and indeed our university. Thank you.